are these people?
The Federal Emergency Management Agency coordinates the federal government's role in preparing for, preventing, mitigating the effects of, responding to, and recovering from all domestic disasters, whether natural or man-made, including acts of terror. Its beginnings can be traced to disaster legislation passed in 1803 to provide assistance to a New Hampshire town following a fire. Following a string of natural disasters in the 60s and 70s, President Jimmy Carter signed Executive Order 12127 and merged nearly 10 federal agencies into what we now know as FEMA. In March 2003, FEMA joined 22 other federal agencies to become part of Homeland Security. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast and most notably the city of New Orleans. Federal and local authorities encouraged those who could not evacuate the city to go to the Superdome to ride out the storm, where there would be assistance to take care of them. This is how your government cares for you. This is a FEMA camp.
This is, and I have a link to more.
This is just last year. Anyway. This is 2022. Here are the tiny homes again. What is this?
In collaboration with Lieutenant Governor Josh Green.
150 square feet. That's not a home. That's a box.
And the help from community members to build several communities of tiny homes across the island to combat the state's homeless population.
I'll remind people that people suffer on the street, and also they really end up having a big impact on society if they have to go to the hospital all the time or be in the ER. Instead, they're here, they're healthy, they restore their relationships. We save millions of dollars by housing people.
U.S. Vets Hawaii operates 2 shelters on Oahu, and they provide shelter to families and veterans.
2 things cause homelessness, and 2 things only: poverty and lack of affordable housing. If we have people that care, and we can get income, and we can get resources, we can end homelessness. It's just a matter of stop trying to manage it and actually try to end it. There are far more people living
that's probably enough for that segment right now
in their homes.
But the thing to keep in mind is a couple things here. So first off, FEMA is kind of a de facto military arm. So what's kind of going on here is they're establishing these emergency kind of initiatives. So they're putting people under kind of this de facto martial law. Okay, they're making it so they have to rely on the government for their support. Okay, and they're creating they're not addressing the issue. What they're doing is they're appealing to private capital to build these freaking prefab bullshit and all the kind of infrastructure that goes around with these kind of alienated and disparate communities. Okay, so that's kind of what I want to keep in mind with that.
There's another one here.
37 tiny homes that will be leased to homeless veterans. It also has a community center with shared facilities, amenities, a medical clinic, and support services.
What is it?
There are so many people that are struggling out there. And to go to this development team who have hearts and say, we can absolutely help families and give them housing. How do we do it? Where do we do it? Let's get it done.
The location is set to open.
It's like here's like the issue I have. Like before I start getting just on a brief sidetrack, because let's just keep in mind that, you know, kind of going back to where we're trying to have kind of like a dialectical kind of conversation and kind of like look at this from all this stuff and kind of like a broad way of how everything's being impacted, and I kind of lost my train of thought. Is that for every homeless person in America, there's something like 17 or 18 vacant homes. Okay. So the problem is not supply. Okay. And when we realize that the problem is not supply, then immediately we know that what they're doing is they're just grifting, you know, because if the issue was supply, okay, give them homes, you know, and what they're doing is instead of just, you know, expropriating or maybe taking away the profit motive from make housing a right, they're doing this to appeal to NGOs essentially. So, and what I want to do, so that's probably good on the video, unless there was more that you wanted to share. But I wanted to kind of show this other company just as an example, because this shit's freaking, I think it's depraved, but people get a kick out of this, but people seem to think that this is kind of like in a good thing, because it's like, oh well, first off, it's kind of ironic that these guys all have military gear on this like homepage. But you can see like all these prefab homes, like again, this isn't addressing the issue. This is appealing to capital interests. So build a village. Okay. So we're just gonna look at a couple of stuff. Featured project. Yeah, just let's see. I want to see palette for disaster. But you can see, okay, so they want to put people into basically these prison cells. Okay, that's not a home to me. That's a box. And this is just one example of these NGOs kind of do this stuff. They're not really addressing the issue while appearing to address the issue. What they're doing is they're just, selling out. They're just grifting off of this stuff. So let's look at one other thing here. I just want to see. You can kind of see how ridiculous some of this stuff is. Let me zoom this in a little bit. Okay. Oh, I'll get to that, Team Orca. Good point. But you can see, so this is kind of what's happening. And let's keep in mind that it's not individuals who are going to be buying these products. It's the state. It's the government that's going to be purchasing these things. So the price doesn't matter. Although I think at some point, the state is going to try and charge people to live in these homes. They'll give them disaster relief initially, and then they're going to be like, okay, it's time to collect. But that's more of just kind of my opinion, so I don't want to get too much into that. But you can see, like, they're creating they're trying to make all the, like, basically entire prefab communities. And, like, I don't particularly find any of this to be virtuous, really. It looks sterile, like, just from like a human aspect, just unappealing. This doesn't look like I wouldn't want a community like this where it looks like I'm living in a goddamn prison camp. That looks like a fucking prison cell. I'm sorry. Like,
I mean, we're over this plenty of times. I showed the Futurama video on like plenty of other segments where it's like literally living in a closet.
Yeah, like, this is crazy. Like, come on. Like, this
so
is
I'm,
supposed
so
to
I'm
be.
Curious I'm curious about this. This is something that
I'm good on. I guess I can stop sharing that. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys because I think it's a prison camp, and we'll dig in a little bit more into that. But that's kind of where I'm going with this. And actually, there's Alex Jones called that about 15 years ago. So I'll just put that there.
Yeah. Look up police state for FEMA camps.
So what I kind of want to pivot to before I start getting more into FEMA and the overall picture is I just want to drive home again that, I'm of the belief, and Greg, I don't know how necessarily far you go with like climate change and where you think the line is, but I just want you guys to see that Project Veritas, and this was done like 6-8 months ago. It's quite a long time ago that they did this, and this is the CNN tech director.
Climate change is like a narrative used to control.
Yeah, it's a narrative.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to show this.
Climate change is real. Like they're definitely using it for a propaganda tool, and it's important.
Propaganda, and then also there's a financial element. There's a profit motive.
It's a fourth industrial.
It's also a new villain. So climate change, because it's kind of like this like abstract thing. They need to keep us in kind of like a perpetual state of like fear and uncertainty. And so it's like, oh, well, if like Trump's not in office, they're going to freaking find something else to ramp up. Oh, like no more pandemic. What can we do? So let's listen to the CNN tech director, okay, talk about how they're going to just freak Americans out with nonstop coverage on climate change.
A new story comes out, they're going to latch onto it. They've already announced in their office that once the public will be open to it, we're going to start focusing mainly on climate, like global warming, and like that's going to be our next like I don't know, like what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to be our focus. Like our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
What does that look like?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I have a feeling it's just going to be like constantly showing videos of like decline in ice and weather warming up and like the effects it's having on the economy and really talking about it. head of the network, like just
Who's that? Is that Zucker?
Zucker. Yeah, I imagine that he's got his council, and they've all like discussed like where they think.
And look, this is Project Veritas, guys.
So that's like
this
the
was
next
6 months ago. This is before O'Keefe
pandemic like story like that will beat to death. But that one's got longevity. You know what I mean? It's not like there's a definitive ending to the pandemic, or like it'll taper off to a point that it's not a problem anymore. Climate thing's going to take years, so they'll probably be able to miss that.
And that's the other thing to tie into is that like he's admitting climate thing is going to take years, if not decades. And if they can milk freaking out Americans and freaking out the world over climate change, they're going to milk it out as long as possible, because if they can keep us in a state of fear, we're more likely to just do whatever the government tells us to do. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Now so let's see. Is there any more play? I think you get kind of a picture here. But I just wanted to play this kind of clip really quick and just show you guys that, CNN saying the quiet part out loud. That, I mean, obviously he was kind of caught with his pants down. But it's very obvious to me that climate change is a narrative that's being driven to us, and that it's kind of being foisted upon us instead of something that has happened organically. And I think that's worth considering. Now, I just kind of wanted to show you before I kind of start getting, a little bit kind of schizo a little bit. I want to just kind of edify some of the stuff. I just wanted to edify some of the stuff that I was like, I'm kind of getting to. So
you know what it is? I feel like this is beyond conspiracy. This is beyond like any sort of like, this is concerning. This is questions that people should be asking. That's simply what it is.
So
and it's important to point it out, to have these questions and
have the conversation
critically about what's happening here, what is actually happening here. Because if we look at the track record of our current government, it's terroristic, it's literally Nazis, and we're like a pure like imperialist power who seems to be on the side of evil almost every time.
All the time, yeah. So before I kind of shift gears a little bit, I just wanted to show you guys. So kind of what I'm building up to is kind of I'm making the case where, if you guys can already kind of tell, that this kind of climate disaster stuff that we're being thrusted upon us is going to be deliberately initiated by the U.S. and private capital. So before we get too crazy, I just wanted to show you guys a couple quotes and some videos of leaders that said that we already have had this technology for quite a while. So now on the topic of weather modification and direct energy, for example, U.S. Secretary of Defense William S. Cohen said in April 28th in 1997 at the Conference on Terrorism, Weapons of Mass Destruction and U.S. Strategy, University of Georgia, while discussing the dangers of false threats, quote, "Others are engaging even in an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves." Okay, that's HARP. Topic for another day perhaps, but that's weather modification. Now, I know a few weeks ago we were talking about directed energy, and I don't know if directed energy and like weather modification are the same thing. But you can see that, was it 25 years ago? We had the Secretary of Defense saying the quiet part out loud, that we had weather modification technology. Of course, he's saying others are engaging in it. But that's actually a good thing. So to kind of pivot to. So let's look at the video of the what's her name? The Romanian senator. Here, I'll put it in the private chat. So I don't know if you guys remember at the beginning of the year, there was an earthquake in Turkey. And the people who were kind of on that shit were pretty quick to suggest that it was a terrorist attack or it was a weather modification attack. So what I want to do, and Greg's going to pull his video up, is that here's a video of a Romanian senator saying that the earthquakes were triggered by U.S. weather modification device, otherwise known as HARP.
This is full schizo mode, but this is crazy. This is crazy.
So just be careful, like right after like 9 or 10 seconds, unless you just want to go to like 23 seconds in, because she does say something that would possibly get us.
Talk about the vax.
Yeah, she talks a little bit about some pandemic stuff.
The vax stuff.
So let's just go. So basically, she's making a declaration that, you know, we've been fed a bunch of bullshit. Okay. And so let's go to about 23 seconds, 23 seconds. But yeah, you can see.
Oh my God. That's not okay. That's not a good word.
But it's important to see. So let's listen to what she has to say.
Globului, dar repun pe alte făgașuri politica internațională.
Oh, it's in a different language. We're good.
Yeah. Through wars that reduce the world's population but rearranges international politics, realigns power. We have lived to witness the production of earthquakes on command, which is actually an attack on Turkey by the greatest of the world, who totally dislike being set up by Erdogan, the president of Turkey. Moreover, his position of neutrality and mediator of the Ukrainian-Russian war deeply disturbed them, especially since Turkey is the second great power from a military point of view within NATO. His position to block Sweden's accession into NATO, his speech in Davos, as well as the gesture of leaving in the middle of a press conference defying Schwab, did not remain without an echo in the cold world of leaders. But no one thought that people would have to die, so many people, in such a terrible way. And it's just a warning because it wasn't the most populated area of Turkey. 150 aftershocks of a devastating earthquake, the second larger than the first, without the existence of an epicenter. The area being artificially stimulated, geological weapons having existed for a very long time, being used so far without causing too many casualties, probably for experiments. Now it has been put into practice. If we look carefully at the map of Turkey, you'll see that it's furrowed by gas and oil pipelines, this being actually one of the goals.
Acestea fiind de fapt și unul dintre scopuri, distrugerea lor. Însă cu 10 secunde înainte de producerea așa zisului seism, Turcia au închis aceste conducte. În plus, cu 24 de ore înainte de producerea seismului, 10 state și-au retras ambasadorii din Turcia. Cu 5 zile înainte de producerea acestuia, Maui din România emitea o avertizare de călătorie pentru cetățenii români în Turcia, deși nu exista un pericol la fel alte țări. Omorând oameni și-au făcut interesele. Hărțile prezentate pe toate canalele de televiziune arată că nu a existat un epicentru, ci o epilinie cu mii de cutremure. Serviciile secrete turcești investigează o posibilă intervenție criminală, a se citi o implicare a altui stat în declanșarea primului seism, ce a urmat ulterior fiind o reacție în lanț după destabilizarea plăcilor tectonice din regiune. Este foarte clar că președintele Erdogan a fost pedepsit pentru curajul, demnitatea și onoarea sa și pentru apropierea sa de Federația Rusă, în fapt o poziție de neutralitate și mediere pentru pace. În plus, se dorește îndepărtarea atenției oamenilor de pe Ucraina, unde deja reprezentanții multor țări au început să vocifereze împotriva despotismului și ordinelor date de președintele Zelenski, de parcă ar conduce lumea și cineva ar avea obligația să trimită arme și să participe la războiul său.
And I'm not going down that whole rabbit hole today because I think she does a good job kind of summarizing the Turkey earthquake. There's other examples, but I just wanted to kind of show the most recent one. I am of the opinion, like I am of the belief that obviously that we can do this shit, and we have done this shit. So, now that I've had some edification there, what I'm going to do is let's look at the map and let's take a look at some of these disaster resilience zones and kind of where I think they're going at with this stuff. So I'm going to share this. All right, give me just a second here. Is it going to be all weird? It's going to be all weird for me. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, awesome. So, okay, we can kind of see that. I see it coming through on Restream.
I see it. You got it?
Yeah, I got it on my screen. I just want to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Okay, guys. So remember how I was talking about the 483 census tracts? So you see all these little like gray areas all over the map. We'll go to Colorado for the sake of being my state for now. But you can see these little gray tracts. Okay, these are the disaster resilience zones. Okay, So that's where my belief is where the U.S. is going to start, doing weather modification and wreaking havoc on these areas. Okay. And then private capital is going to jump in and they're going to get on the grift. They're going to start setting up these tiny homes and they're going to divert people and try and relocate them into these areas so that they're now under martial law. And then they're going to force them eventually to turn them into eventually war camps. Now, I did see some articles and stuff like that about how, they are actually converting POW camps and internment camps into these FEMA camps. But, I wasn't 100% enough on the sources, so I didn't really want to go too far on that stuff. But here's Hawaii, for example, obviously because it's topical with the stuff that's talking in Lahaina. But it's weird. You would think that Lahaina would have gotten designated a zone. It did not. Okay. But to kind of, I saw Orca said something earlier where they're going to try and relocate Lahaina residents. Well, look what's going on the Big Island. So my belief is that they're going to start setting up, the FEMA camps over on the Big Island. They're going to tell the people in Lahaina who are homeless now and have nowhere to go. They're going to be like, hey, you have a home on the Big Island. You have a tiny home on the Big Island. And that's where I'm seeing this go.
Yeah, and so the weather modification is not even purely conspiracy theory. It exists. Look up cloud seeding. It's not
chemtrails, stuff like that. There's different levels to it, but I would agree with you on that. I'm trying the best I can to not sound totally schizo and come at this from a kind of objective thing, kind of trying to back it up a little bit, because I know you kind of have to stretch your imagination a little bit to kind of believe these things. So I would understand if people thought I was being overly cynical with this stuff. But if you understand that the U.S. is capable of committing basically climate crime, climate terrorism, eco-terrorism, and doing it deliberately and doing it in specific regions, which I think if you look at this map, you can see that the U.S. is basically telling on themselves, and in my opinion, telling us where these attacks are going to take place. Not natural disasters, attacks. And they're going to try and forcibly relocate people into these camps, okay, which are now under martial law because FEMA is part of FEMA is under martial law. And so you have this thing where you have private capital trying to grift off the climate change. You saw the media like CNN, for example, talking about they're going to grift all day off the climate change. So they're going to perpetuate it as well. And then the U.S. government, because we live in a fascist country, is going to appeal to capital interests by attacking these regions. So yeah, that's where I'm going at with this. And before we get into a last part, that Tim Truth video, kind of the bigger picture. Now, this is kind of me kind of speculating a little bit, but what I am seeing happening here, okay, is that we'll take Lahaina, for example, okay? They're going to try and move them to the Big Island, okay? Now, they have a pretty robust mutual aid thing, and I'm waiting for Pasta's new video to come out because I'm really curious about that. And, they have a pretty resilient community as far as Hawaii in particular has a lot of bad blood with the U.S. government as far as colonization and sovereignty. So I think it's going to be really interesting when these camps start getting built on the Big Island and they try and relocate Lahainians onto the Big Island, whether that's going to start like a conflict, or people are just going to move, or the U.S. is going to come in and martial law and they're going to be like, no more mutual aid, no more anything. You're either going to volunteer or voluntold, and they're going to forcibly move people into these camps. Now, under FEMA, it's my understanding that initially they would provide some sort of no cost, relief at no cost to people who are impacted by these natural disasters. But I don't think that that's going to be the end goal. I think eventually they're going to turn these things into kind of labor camps. Again, I'm kind of speculating. My belief is that eventually they're going to want to turn these disaster resilient zones into profit centers. And whether
do you have anything
through,
from the Deborah Tavares stuff?
like all that stuff I was sending you. Oh
yeah.
My god. There was a couple good ones. I'd have to go through my screenshot stuff.
Maybe we can expand on this a little bit later, but like,
yeah, I might pull something up again later then. But yeah, you guys can see where I'm full schizo on this. I think within the next few months, they're going to have these little tiny homes built up. They're going to freaking try and force people to move there. And we're either going to see a huge conflict erupt in fucking Maui, or we're going to see people kind of getting relocated en masse into these FEMA camps. So do you want to go back to that Tim Truth video?
Yeah, let's play it.
So that's probably a good point to get to the last video that I have for this segment, and then again I'll try and pull up some other stuff on the Deb Tavares kind of report on Iron Mountain stuff.
And it's not necessarily schizo mode. It's not necessarily schizo.
Now again, where I'm coming from with this is they're going to make work compulsory, and you're going to see through this video why I am of that belief. So I guess you could probably start the video.
Didn't do the best job of covering up the open pipes leading into each of the cabins. Complete with an air pressure PSI indicator, there's a manual turn lever and an open pipe that would allow nefarious officials to easily pump noxious or incapacitating gas on a cabin-by-cabin basis, allowing precision attacks against their desired targets. And I can't shake this sinking feeling in my gut that maybe these are extermination camps. This may be a way to clandestinely kill certain, quote, undesirables and or sterilize them. Remember what we just went through. The Australia government was forcibly putting people into concentration camps, quarantine camps. We have a hot mic recording of a guard telling somebody that they'd get fucking gassed if they didn't calm down.
So it sounds like they want this guy to stay here longer, which is concerning for me because he's stayed here for 14 days.
Mate, you gotta take me somewhere fucking else!
Australia went way crazy with that.
Yeah, they freaking...
And how could we ever forget the whistleblower from within the manufacturing process? A tradie who was involved in building these quarantine cabins in Australia, telling us that there were these strange gas pipes that would allow the government to gas people in the cabins. And he said that there was an anomalous pipe leading into each room, which would allow camp staff to administer any type of gas they wanted, straight into people's rooms. He even asks, what are they going to gas us in these?
Just want to quickly show you guys something, right? Alright, I'm going to show you these things, ready? These are the quarantine buildings. And these are each rooms. Now see these wires, this is a window. Why do you think they got the wire in the window? It hooks up because they've got a massive roller shutter that keeps you in. This electronic door, which will make it lock, turn the air conditioner off or on. There's that much gadgets, these buildings, what is it, 900,000?
These little tiny homes cost almost $1 million each.
These little prisons, size of little remand buildings. But this is the thing. Through all these buildings is connected a gas pipe that is connected to nothing.
Yeah, just for the heat. See, relax. It's both cold.
Right here. The rest of the building, your air conditioning, your hot water, electrical and that. What's this one here? It's through the wall. It's through. It's going to come through the ventilator.
The AC.
Right. What are they going to gas us in with? Show you one that's starting to get sheeted.
We're the Nazis, man. We're the Nazis.
And the only weak point.
We are Nazis. Don't get touched.
Is underneath this window.
So he's like basically describing how people have to freaking break out if they're starving to death or they're freaking like suffocating.
Now, what's extremely concerning is the governor of Hawaii has announced the Kahale Initiative, which we're seeing rolled out around the world under a different name. In other parts of the world, such as San Diego, California, they're calling it Tiny Homes for the Homeless. Now look at what we can see if we zoom into some footage local media aired about these camps. Do you see what's on the wall? That is an open pipe that leads straight into each cabin, meaning the government can administer whatever they want to any of these people. They could sterilize people through the air, through the water, through the
Sterilize,
food, through the so-called medicine.
Either way.
They could even incapacitate people, help themselves to their room since they have the key, and take their organs.
The project was created in collaboration with Lieutenant Governor Josh Green.
Yeah, we already played this, but
yep. So you guys can see in the beginning, like I was saying, like they want us to be under government control. They want us to be completely like dependent on government resources. And you know why I think that point kind of illustrates itself on why I think eventually work is going to be compulsory. Whether they just sterilize, whether they sterilize these people or kill them, the end goal is the same, depopulation, Malthusians, whatever. And here's Deb Tavares kind of doing a little clip here, kind of where I kind of jumped off on some of this stuff. That Tim Truth kind of gave me a little bit of inspiration for the segment, and then I saw the stuff on the Deb Tavares, and that's why I'm totally cynical on this shit.
Yeah.
Talks about a combination of irresistible attacks upon humanity and how they will control humanity. Politically, they talk about how they set up the political system right and left so that we would feel our grievances were aired and our frustrations could come out. But the bankers were behind everyone who was elected, and they laugh at us. They laugh at us.
And by the way, like I recommend books such as like Carol Quigley, like The Anglo-American Empire. You can learn a lot about elite societies and what the actual intention is between like how civilization is set up in a way to maintain capital and power. And Carol Quigley is like an insider, so like you could read like a firsthand account of like what they actually think, but just like add stuff like that to like this kind of stuff.
Very last,
I do want to talk to Charlie Robinson one day. Actually, I heard he's available.
Charlie Robinson.
Yeah. He wrote
might have to see a visual on that.
And I'll go to this right now because we'll come back to the document itself. But the very last statement in this document, it says, Factor 6, cattle. Those who will not use their brains are no better off than those who have no brains. And so this mindless school of jellyfish, father, mother, son, and daughter, become useful beasts of burden or trainers of the same. So what they say in this document is they will dole out poisonous foods. It's not what we need, but it's what we want. And those that decide to eat these foods will have the consequences of that. They tell us how they set up all the social engineering, how they devise the family, how they crumble the family, how they set up the war machine, how they influence thinking in the family unit to allow the family to give up their children to war for a rich man's fodder. Well, I think we need a revelation, not a revolution. A revolution would only bring in martial law, in the opinion of what we are looking at, would bring in martial law. It would also allow people to be targeted with the weaponry that they cannot wait to roll out on us. All the documents, the Iron Mountain document, even the NASA war document, talks about there are too many people using too much stuff, and the Earth cannot support this. And they've come up with the fear-based scientific fraudulent information that people are now accepting. They're rewriting history and they're rewriting science.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I think she's just a good source of information, Deb Tavares. I kind of came across her relatively recently, but one of the books she mentions is Report from Iron Mountain, which I just recently finished, or I'm about to finish reading, I guess I should say. And they literally had 15 different academic scholars, like people from across the globe, meet up and kind of go through the discussion of war as a necessity in society and the feasibility for peace. And they basically wrote an entire, about 150 pages and came to the conclusion that the U.S., in order to perpetuate itself, has to always be in a state of war. And so part of that, I think, is not necessarily making it where war is us shooting other people or other people shooting us, but that war can also be kind of this thing where it's like, well, if we don't actually have an actual human enemy, then the Western interests need to create an enemy. And that's where I kind of think that climate change is coming through on that.